All right, ladies and gentlemen, our final keynote speaker of the morning is Lieutenant General Vincent Stewart. He is the Deputy Commander, U.S. Cyber Command, the newest of the 10 unified commands in the U.S. Department of Defense. He previously served as the Commander, Marine Corps Forces Cyber Command, and Director of Intelligence, Headquarters, United States Marine Corps. Lieutenant General Stewart has a master's degree in National Security and Strategic Studies from the Naval War College, National Resource Strategy from ICAF, sir. I got to put you on there, sir.
That's beautiful. Thank you.
Welcome, General Stewart.
That's good enough. Thank you. Hey, Brett, how are you? So, how do you guys want to do this? I mean, I can give you this pitch, and you'll all fall asleep before lunch, or we can talk. Let's talk, because before we can really talk about competing in cyberspace, I've got to put this in context, and here's the context I like to use for this audience. I came on active duty, wait for this, and don't any young folks gasp. I came on active duty in 1981. You know, most of the time I come up here with a little walker. It gets me across the stage. I came on active duty in 1981. Let me tell you what the world was like in 1981. Because it'll speak to how we compete in 2018 and beyond. Bipolar world. Soviet Union, Warsaw Pact, United States, NATO partners, good guys, bad guys. We solve things on the battlefield kinetically. You know, I had a tank platoon for a while. And we're going to go across the Fulda Gap, and we're going to fight tanks versus tanks, and that's how we'd resolve things. And we'd resolve things in these brush fire wars around the globe. And I could, at the time in the early 80s, tell the nation state that I was coming to attack you. I'll be there in 6 months. I'll marshal my forces. I'll move the forces to the battle space. I'll get X number of days or weeks of aerial shaping of and then I'd land the force and we'd win. Think about what technology was like in 1981. Some of you probably remember a fax machine. I guess you could still fax. I wrote something down this morning. Hayes introduced the Smart Modem 300. The operational speed was 300 bits per second. IBM introduced its first PC in 1981. We used to, here's the really cool stuff for you young folks. We had these paper things called maps. And we had this thing, an acetate that we put over the map, and we had these grease pencil that we made, and we knew that that was reliable. We knew that we could capture what we thought was going on the battle space, and we could think about it and act on it at the speed of our grease pencil. And the world has moved on. We used to have these things called newspapers. That's how we got our news. And I know there's folks who still have newspapers. But we used to get these newspapers, and we read those in the morning. And sometime in the evening, we'd turn on Walter Cronkite or Harry Reasoner, and we'd get an update on the news. And we'd go to bed, and the world did not change again until the next morning when we read the newspaper. Think about where we are today, where the world is changing and we have so much information. The first social media came out in the 80s. Bulletin board, I think it was called. Think about where we are today. No, honestly, Facebook wasn't around until the year 2002-ish. Social media, as we understand it today, didn't exist as we know it today. The speed at which information moved and the way the world is connected today was not that way in 1980. We had time to think. We had time to formulate policy. We had time to influence action. We had time. Fast forward, 2018. Before we get to 2018, I talked about how we used to conduct military operations. We did not have Link 16 to seamlessly transfer data between platforms. So we had these things called radios. We push a little button and we talk into the handset. And if we didn't have line of sight, you probably weren't going to talk to anybody. That's how we did business. That's where I started in 1980s. Throw on top of it now this domain we call cyberspace, this information domain, and let's fast forward to 2018. You cannot go into a combat operations center today without the incredible array of digital displays. And everybody believes those digital displays that we have in our combat operations center is absolutely accurate. The ones and zeros that make up the picture on those displays are decision quality ones and zeros, and we're making life and death decisions on them every single day. Our adversaries today believe that U.S. is powerful because we can project combat power. We can project combat power and we can sustain combat power. And we got incredible insights from our overhead constellations and all our command control and our intel systems. And guess what? That makes for a really, really good target. Makes for a really good target. There is not a system today on the modern battlefield that is not connected, maybe your 9mm. Everything else just about is connected on this network and this enterprise that we go to war with every day. Every system, every platform, every weapon system, every connected. And that's just in the warfighting domain. I haven't even started talking about our economy and how all of our systems are connected, the systems that we rely on. How many folks in this room does not have a smartphone? It's a lot easier to count the ones who do not have a smartphone than ones. There are two people. What's wrong with you guys? Because you got to, the Russians, who said that? I think this captain right here said they were Russians. I don't know. I mean, everybody's got a device. I've got a pair of shoes. I won't name the brand. It's got some sensors in there. In the morning, I'm supposed to put them on. I'm supposed to jump 6 times, and it's supposed to measure how high and how quickly my recovery, and it tells me whether or not I should just go back to bed or go for a run. Most mornings it says go back to bed. But we are all connected. Who does not have a ATM card? I don't see any hands going up. Everybody believes that we take that piece of plastic out, we stick it into a device, and we push the pin in, and we're going to get money out of there. What if that doesn't work? What if when you push the numbers, your pin, and you ask for $200, you get a slip that says actually you're minus $2,000 or $200,000? Our way of life, everything that we do today is connected in this network. Here's what our adversaries have discovered. They cannot compete with us kinetically. They cannot compete with us by maneuver. They cannot compete with us in precision. They can compete with us below the level of conflict in this domain we call cyberspace. And they're there every single day competing with us across all of the elements of national power, diplomatically, informationally, military, economically. What if the way we have structured Cyber Command and our thinking about this space, what if it's wrong? This is for you youngsters. What if it's wrong? Because we are all convinced, we all grew up in a system, and General Renner talked about it a little bit, we're all comfortable with a system that says there's an air domain and maritime and a land domain. And we're wrestling with what it is that defines this domain we call cyberspace. When you go off to do combat operations, one of the first things you do is you start talking about battlefield geometry. Where are my right and left lateral limits? There's the depth of the battlefield. What's my terrain look like? What does the terrain look like in cyberspace? Because what it looks like now is changed like that. A man-made domain, router switches servers, and it can be reconfigured with a couple of keystrokes. Oh, by the way, you're operating and you're doing things in this domain at milliseconds. So going forward, what do we need to do to be successful in this space? One, we need to open up the aperture and think about how we fight and win, compete in this domain across all the elements of power, not just militarily. And I don't know that we've given that as much intellectual rigor as we ought to. We're very comfortable with saying it's the same as the other physical domains, and I'm not quite sure it's the same as all the physical domains. When I'm doing ground maneuver and I've got a river, I cannot move that river. If I'm maneuvering in cyberspace with a couple of keystrokes, I can maneuver a router. I can move that terrain. It's different. The pace is different. Think about this. We still haven't quite figured out the dimensions of this domain, right? So you got all the great things that can happen on one side where you build networks and you do wonderful things that benefit mankind. And on the far end, you've got destroy networks. And in the middle, you have this cognitive fight about how you use that network to do things in and through this domain. How do I get inside the minds of my adversary? And our adversary are doing that probably better than we are today. Are they leveraging information operations, psychological operations, deception operations, manipulative operations in this space? And here's what we found. For many years, we were simply reacting to our adversaries. We were reacting to their behavior in this space. We're allowing them to establish the norms of behavior. And we set this incredible standard that we would not. Well, we've adjusted from that. We now have within U.S. Cyber Command a concept called persistent engagement, where we're not going to allow our adversary to move in this space without some cost. So we're going to engage our adversaries. We're going to engage forward. We're going to impose some cost in their behavior. And we're going to make sure that we are starting to shape the norms of behavior in this space. We cannot do that by ourselves. We need partners. We need partners in the private sector. We need international partners. We need partners in academia. We need partners in think tanks. And we are not yet ready to deal with how do you integrate partners across this broad spectrum? How do you take classified information and meld it with unclassified information, meld it with proprietary information from commercial partners, and then send that information back out as appropriate to be helpful in each of those different sectors? And if you're going to bring all the information into space, you need some sort of integrating cyber picture. And guess what, ladies and gentlemen? We haven't got an integrated cyber picture. And if we don't have an integrated cyber picture and you're moving at milliseconds, guess what? You're reacting at that point. I've got to have a mechanism where we're bringing all of the data in, all the proprietary, all the classified, merging all of that with machine learning and artificial intelligence and sending it back out to the appropriate audiences at the right proprietary level, at the right classification level, so they can take action on this. I need an environment where I can see our networks, all of our networks, so that we can defend those networks in real time. We're getting tens of millions of hits per day on just the department's networks. And I don't know that we're seeing them all. So we need partnership. We need the integrated picture. We need policies that allow us to move at network speed. We can no longer in this space have policy that runs all the way to the very senior levels of our organizations before we can take action. We need the flexibility to act as we see emerging threats and opportunities in this space. I'll throw this one out, and I don't have an answer for this one yet. We need to think our way through the issue of sovereignty in cyberspace. If this domain is global, tell me where the boundaries of one of my adversaries, pick one, I don't care which one, Russia, Iran, DPRK, pick one. Where are the boundaries? And think about how Cyber Commission, after the Pearl Harbor catastrophic cyber attack, and it won't be me, I'll be retired, it'll be General Nakasone, before the Congressional Committee, and the committee chairman says, so, General, you were able to see an adversary's malware on some critical infrastructure. Yes, Senator, I was. And you can see his command and control nodes around the globe in different countries and how he would use this system. And General Nakasone, yes, sir, I could. And you had the capability and the tools to counter what the malware both here and General Nakasone, yes, sir, I could. And what did you do about it, General? I observed it closely. That is not going to be a really good story. But yet we wrestle with, okay, so if this device is in a third country, how do you deal with that? How do you deal with that if the country doesn't have the capability to take care of the malware? Do we do that unilaterally? What does sovereignty mean in this space and protecting sovereignty in this space? And doing that, again, this is not about something we can debate for 3 weeks. This is about doing something at network speed. So we need strong partnership, we need integrated pictures, we need policymakers who are ready to deal with this space. We're going to have a whole bunch of practitioners who are going to be so much better and so much ahead of our policymakers. We need good policymakers. We need flexibility to think and act differently in this space. It is a different space. It should be integrated in all of our other warfighting capability. It should be integrated in the whole of government approach, but it is different. And more than anybody else, I need you cadets and midshipmen, and I need you all to challenge the stuff that we've been talking about in this space. Because, I've got a little, I won't talk about my card. What if we're wrong? What if we're getting it wrong? You have nothing invested yet. Maybe a little bit, a couple of years here and there. Us older folks, we're invested in the past. We're defending the status quo more than anything else. I need you young folks to challenge us in this space, to ask the hard questions, to look at different ways that we can use and be effective in cyberspace, and to look at the things that we can do to be integrated across the enterprise, the things that we can do to drive persistence, the things that we can do to impose cost, make our adversaries fight rather than us fighting and defending. I'll stop there and take questions. And if you'd like, I can go back to my speech. It's really quite boring. No, it's not. I shouldn't say that. The team writes very well. I just read poorly. So I'll stop there because you probably, nothing from Defense One, though. The downside about coming to speak at these things is people ask me questions and I don't want to answer them. Go ahead.
I'll take a shot. Sidney Friedberg, Breaking Defense General. You mentioned
From where?
breakingdefense.com.
Okay, got it.
The question, we talked about the importance of situational awareness. The NATO general mentioned that, certainly. You mentioned that. You mentioned that we don't have, we have these wonderful digital screens to show us the physical world and our data on the physical world. But ironically, we don't have the wonderful digital common operating picture for the digital world. So how do we build that? I mean, how do we avoid, it just being, an endless pile of sticky notes on the edges of people's screens?
Yeah, that's. I would argue that's probably one of our top priorities because right now we have X number of digital displays that we're all trying to kludge together with some carbon-based fusion thing like me, looking at 27 displays and trying to figure out where it all connects. So I think that's got to be one of our highest priorities. How do we get all of that data, all of the disparate data lakes that we have with an incredible amount of data, aggregated in such a way that we can put it in one place in multiple layers and make sense out of it. So if anybody in industry wants to help solve that problem, you might get a buyer because that is a unique, and like I said, how do I integrate classified data? How do I integrate proprietary data from commercial partners? How do I integrate tech data from host? All of that's got to be integrated and then turn into something realistic. All of it. I agree. We're not there. We must get there. And I don't have the answer for that one yet, but I'm digging. Which way you want to go to? Okay.
Sir, Lieutenant Erica Volino from CNMF. As you're talking to the cadets and to young officers in the room, you talk about how we need to start challenging the status quo and thinking about these ideas. What suggestions do you have for helping us develop the critical and analytical thinking that takes time and experience when we're constantly being told we need to move faster, as you say, network speed?
Give me the question again, one more time.
Sir,
I'm a Marine, so you got to go really, really slow, so I understand.
Not a problem. The thinking I feel like you're asking the cadets and the young officers to do takes time, and it takes analysis. But at least in my experience, I feel we're being asked to continue to operate and think faster.
Yes.
So how do we reconcile those two contradicting
You
ideas?
don't. I want you to think smarter and faster.
Yes, sir.
I really can't reconcile because the reality is I can't. We've got to create a training environment where you can. Anybody read the book Ender's Game? To me, how do we create that kind of training environment where you're learning so much in that environment that it's forcing you to think harder and higher and faster, so when you do see a problem, it really is kind of, oh, I've seen that before, I can do this. But we still haven't created a training environment that challenges us enough where you can get that higher order analytic thinking because we're pushing people to their maximum ability. And we need to build that. So anybody want to build that Ender's Game training environment for cyberspace? You might get a buyer somewhere. But it still has got to be faster and much more critical. And I don't know, because I got to do it at network speed and I got to do it really at a high order. Okay, where are we going? We're going to work this way?
Go back this way.
All right, go. Number one.
Sir, Mike Schmidt from the United States Naval War College. Question on sovereignty.
Yes.
We've been having.
I told you I didn't have an answer for that one, so why are you
I know, but I want to know when you're going to get the answer, and that's my question.
Okay.
So we've been debating this now for about 3 years.
Yeah.
Last year there was a panel on sovereignty. Tomorrow there's a panel on sovereignty. This summer, the United Kingdom Attorney General, the British Attorney General came forward and they set forth the British position on sovereignty.
Yep.
How close are we to getting an interagency position on sovereignty?
Not close. I won't go any more than that, not close. Hey, No, I'll stop there.
Thank you, General. Good to see you again. Patrick Tucker with Defense One.
Yeah.
Although
I thought we banned you from asking.
I might not be by the end of the day. You keep saying that. I don't know. But my question is about defending forward, right? We've got this new strategy in place that highlights the idea of defending forward. And I've got a sense of what that is. It sounds like sort of advanced reconnaissance in the cyber domain. What operationally is defending forward? And I wonder if you could also comment briefly on the sovereignty issue. You said that you can't solve it, but we know that defending forward has already been something that's been operationally tested. So how is that friction working out? How do you solve it?
Yeah, so much like in the physical domain, let's use counterterrorism. I want to play all away games. I don't want any home games. I don't want to wait until our adversary's in what we used to call, I hate the term, blue space, in CONUS before I'm countering that adversary. So I want to find him wherever he is. And I want to disrupt him, whether that's in gray space, sovereignty issue, or back at home. And so defending forward is nothing more than being active in your defense, just like we've always done. Fight forward, disrupt forward, deny forward, make his servers less effective, and have minimal number of cleanup issues in blue space. And I think the more we do that, the better off we'll be long term.
Can you comment on how that's been tested operationally?
No.
Okay.
That's a nice try, but
Okay, it was an okay try.
suffice to say, over the last 6 months, we've been given sufficient authorities that allow us to implement the approach of defending forward.
Sir, Midshipman Tony Dosey from the United States Naval Academy. You mentioned it a little bit in your reference to General Nakasone, but there's occasional conflict of interest.
He's the boss, so don't tell him I said that, okay? Don't anybody mention that I threw him under the bus, because, I'd like
But
to-
sir, there is occasionally a natural conflict of interest between intelligence agencies such as the NSA and Cyber Command, where the NSA may want to sit and observe the exploited targets for the sake of intelligence, whereas Cyber Command may want to utilize these exploits for a direct kinetic.
Who gave you that question? Anybody from NSA here? Okay, go ahead and finish the question. I can answer
Sir,
then.
how do you suggest we make these decisions as far as which one to perform action?
Look, I'm schizophrenic about this one. There are days when I love the relationship that we have with NSA, and I'm just like, you've got this incredible, exquisite access, and we're learning, and we're doing, and we're capable, and I love you to death. And there are days when it's like divorce right now. I don't care what happens to the kids because I want to get after that target, and you're telling me that I can't get after that. Here's the good news. We have a great partnership with NSA. We're working together to find options that allows us to implement the things we want to do on the Cyber Command side, while preserving, in some cases, really, really exquisite access and insights that we can't get anywhere else. The one thing I know with absolute certainty, if we were at war, I wouldn't have the intel gain loss conversation that I have while we're in this period where we're not at war. But the partnership is solid. We collaborate very well. Sometimes it's frustrating, and I want to sacrifice the children, but for the most part, I think we work our way around now. Cyber Command's got to get to, as it matures and it develops its own access, it's got to get to the point where it can conduct independent operations without having to rely on. And that will come over time. Reminder to everybody, we're only about 8 years old. And we just finished the build, and we're now thinking our way through, okay, how do you put steel on target in this space? So for now, the partnership's good. We do have some friction. For the most part, though, those have been well resolved. But we'll get better, and we'll develop our own access over time. And whoever the hell gave you that question, I need to talk to them. They're trying to get me in trouble. But no, I'm not going to go back there. This young lady's been trying to get a question for about 20 minutes. Yes,
Sir,
ma'am.
Fisherman First Class Hannah Kudo from the Naval Academy. Let's pretend that we define borders for sovereignty for each country. What would we be able to do that would hold adversaries like China or Russia to those boundaries, especially since we really haven't decided effectively how to react to certain cyber attacks on the U.S.?
Let me change. Let me change the question a little bit. Here's what I usually get when we talk about the Russians. The Russians will continue to press us until we push back. Excuse me. So you got to push back against the Russians, otherwise they'll keep doing stuff. And then almost instantly, some guy from the intelligence community will say, yeah, but if you push back, we'll escalate into, and we'll be at nuclear war by the end of the weekend. None of us know. So part of what we got to do, neither Russia nor China will conform to the standards. Unfortunately, it's going to take something catastrophic before we put rules that govern behavior in this space. History has shown that catastrophic events drives us to, holy crap, we really need to think about what we want to do in this space. But we cannot, at this stage, cede any territory to these adversaries. And so we're going to continue to do that. And I don't know if that comes close to answering your question, but that's the best I got. We're out of time. I will stay for 15 or seconds or so and answer all the questions I can in that 15-second time span. And with that, I'll stop. Thanks.